Lance Funk is not your typical Alzheimer's patient. Diagnosed at the age of 51 and in seemingly perfect health, Sharley Funk has watched her husband's health deteriorate since his initial diagnosis in 2021. In describing this experience, she wrote, "In some ways, it's like being a young mom, but instead of watching a baby grow and progress, I watch Lance forget." Sharley Funk has shared her open and honest perspective of having a husband with early-onset Alzheimer's on her Instagram account, The Moment of Funk. She and her husband Lance live in southern Utah and are the parents of 3 children, and in 2023 became grandparents for the first time. This is All In, an LDS Living podcast where we ask the question, what does it really mean to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ? I'm Morgan Pearson, and I am so honored to have Sharley Funk on the line with me today. Sharley, welcome.
Thank you, Morgan. I'm very honored to be here.
Well, this is so I feel like I should tell listeners before we start that this episode, the president of Deseret Book, Laurel Day, sent me a message, and she had run across your Instagram account, Sharley, and she said, I think this woman has a really valuable perspective to share. And so I went to your Instagram, and the very first picture that popped up had your daughter Riley in the picture, and Riley and I served our missions together. And so I was like, man, this is such a small world, but she was such a great missionary. And so I said, well, she was an amazing missionary, so her parents must be awesome. And I'm so excited to get to talk with you more. But before we get too far into this, I wanted to, I know, Sharley, that you have shared a bit about the first realizations you had that something was wrong with your husband's health. But could you share with us when you all first noticed signs or symptoms that something was wrong? And what did you think when you first received the diagnosis?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit different situation for us because my husband was 51. Really 50 when he started first showing signs. And so the first things I noticed was we'd be having a conversation and I'd ask him a question and he wouldn't really answer the question. Like sometimes I was like, are you not really listening to what I'm saying? And it wasn't like that before. And I even remember saying to him one time, have you noticed we're having a hard time communicating? Like we've always been so good at communicating and we're kind of having a hard time. And he was like, no. And then the other thing was passwords and just the computer and things like that he's always been really tech savvy and he uses technology a lot in his work, or he did. And I noticed that he just was struggling so much. He would change a password on his phone because he forgot his password, but then he wouldn't really realize that he had to change that password on his computer where he had it saved. And so he literally for weeks, he'd just get tied up in this stuff that was not making sense. And then also I had a few phone calls from his work from people saying, what's going on with Lance? Like he called and asked me about this form that he's probably filled out 1,000 times before. And he said to me, is that the one with all the numbers on it? Like he had never seen it before. And so things like that were like the big red flags in the beginning.
Right. And do you think he had any sense of his mind slipping, or was he just unaware of it?
It's so hard to say, like mostly unaware of it. I think he realized he was frustrated, but I don't think he really realized. And every time that was hard for me because I would have to be the one to tell him.
Right.
And even when he stopped working, I had to be the one to say, you're not really capable of doing this anymore. Like it's kind of a liability right now. And he was so upset and said, what have I done that's so bad? And it just broke my heart because really like every step of the way, I had to be the one to tell him, you know, you can't drive anymore. You're putting other people at risk and things like that he didn't understand because he didn't see it.
Right. Oh, that's so hard.
Yeah.
So you start to recognize these things happening, and then presumably went to doctors and they tell you that it's early onset. Tell me how that happened.
That actually took about a year because of his age. No one would have ever thought that this was Alzheimer's. It's so rare in somebody his age. And I didn't think it was either. And what they first landed on was PTSD. And we spent about a year on that of like, this is curable. He needs counseling, because he just has had a lot of trauma in his life. He's had a lot of death in his life and a lot of hard things. And then right about the time that he started showing symptoms, he was an owner there were 5 owners at his work. He was a realtor, and he was an owner in Remax. And they had their office assistant who we loved her so much. She was like family to us. And we found out she had embezzled a huge amount of money, like pretty much all the money in the business. And we never took money out. It was kind of our retirement, was this ownership of this business. None of us had ever taken any money out, and she had embezzled $400,000.
Wow.
And so we had to take out a loan. Lance was the one that had hired her, like, I think, and then that's when the symptoms started. So we were kind of all like, wow, maybe it's related. Like this was so traumatic for him that's what's causing this. And so he went to counseling, and we tried different things. And it was hard for me because we'd go to the doctor, and I didn't want to say in front of my husband, I didn't want to say, he's just not very smart anymore. But that's kind of what I was feeling. Mm-hmm. So it was tough. But finally, I went to the doctor without my husband, and I said, listen, this is what's going on. And he said, okay, we're going to line you up with this testing to really find out what's happening.
I cannot even imagine what that has to feel like. And to your point, I think you had a post where you said that a doctor said, the odds were so incredibly low, even when testing him, that it would be that. And so I want to now back up a little bit. And you and Lance have been married for how many years now? Is it 35, 36?
No, it'll be 33 next month.
Okay.
Our anniversary is almost here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
And even more well done given the circumstance. You are absolutely remarkable, and he's lucky to have you. But I wondered, could you tell us how the two of you met and what first attracted you to Lance? Kind of what makes Lance special?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. It was in college. We went to school in Cedar City, Utah, and I worked at Pizza Hut there as a waitress, and he started working as a delivery driver. And I met him the day he started. We were working the same shift, and I got off work and went home. And then maybe like a half hour later, he pulled up, and he was going to visit some girls that lived above me. And I opened my door, and I'm like, Lance. And so he came in and visited with me, and there were 6 of us that lived in my apartment, but only one other roommate was home. And he stayed there for like 2 hours with just me and my roommate. And we hung out, and it was fun. And then he started dating my roommate. But it was really like the best situation because he hung out with all of us. Like he hung out at my apartment a lot, and we just hung out together. And then my roommate went home for the summer, and he would still hang out with me and my other roommates that stayed in town. But we worked together at night. So we'd hang out in the day, we'd go to the pool, we'd go on bike rides, and then we'd work together at night. And we were spending probably like 18, 20 hours a day together.
Wow.
We'd just sleep for, we were teenagers. We didn't have to sleep very much. And we just became best friends. It was amazing because there wasn't any, when you're dating, sometimes you're kind of trying really hard, and there was none of that. That was just gone. Mm-hmm. So he became my best friend, and he was still dating my roommate. And, eventually they broke up, and we started dating, and it just, that we've been best friends our entire marriage. It was the best way to start. And you asked the thing I really was attracted me to Lance. So it's a little bit different because I wasn't really attracted to him in that way at first, but he was so funny and so kind and so thoughtful. And he loved his family, just all the things that you want in a husband. And when I think back of like the things that made me just fall in love with him all over again, there was one time I'd been in my garage and working, and it was just really hot. And it was later in the afternoon, and I came in and showered, and I got out of the shower and I had a big icy Diet Coke from Maverick sitting on the counter of my bathroom. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is the best. It was so thoughtful that he ran and got me an icy cold Diet Coke to like surprise me with, because I've been out in the hot garage. And that's who he is. He just was always so thoughtful and sweet. And like I said, my best friend, I never got sick of being with him. We could just be together all the time, and it was awesome.
Well, I think that having a best friend for a spouse is such a blessing.
Yeah.
I have thought often since getting married that I think under the best circumstance, marriage is like heaven. And that's what makes it heaven, is being married to your best friend.
Yes.
You had an experience early on that has led you to kind of share your journey. And I thought that this was so impressive that you followed the prompting that you received. Can you tell us a little bit about why you continue to share the good and the hard?
Yeah. So in the beginning, this is before we had a diagnosis, and we didn't know what was happening. And it was just so scary, financially scary, because he was the provider for us, and it's scary in so many ways. And I just remember one night feeling so overwhelmed, and I prayed and just said, what can I do? How do I need to prepare for the future? What is just, I'm lost. I need help. And I had all the answers come, like obviously and I was writing them down. Like, I need to pray. I need to honor my covenants that I've made with Heavenly Father. And I just need to stay close to him, and I need to have faith. And those things came, and I was like, okay. And then I went to sleep, and I woke up in the night, and the words came to me that I needed to be honest and open. And I was like, okay. And then I had I don't know if it was a voice. I think it was just an impression, like, you need to write that down. And so I picked up the pad of paper that was next to my bed, and I wrote down honest, and I laid back down to go back to sleep. And the voice was, you didn't write the word open. You wrote honest, but you didn't write the word open. You need to write open. And in my mind, I was kind of like, well, aren't they the same thing? So I grabbed the pad of paper and I wrote open. And then in the morning, I went right back to sleep. And in the morning, I was like, well, that was weird. But I think in the beginning, I thought that was just a guide for me for that time period. Like, I had to be open with Lance. I had to be open with him and say, hey, I know you don't recognize this, but this is what's going on. And I know you don't recognize that there are some things going on at work and in our home, but this is what we're seeing. And I thought that's what that meant. But as it's gone along, I've realized it means it's everything right now. Like, I have to be honest and open with myself. I have to be open in sharing, and open in asking for help, and open to new experiences, and open to having faith and having a completely different outlook in life than what I thought my life was going to be.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned being open and asking for help, and I loved reading. You've shared a lot of different examples of ways that people have served you and your family. And I think sometimes being the recipient of service is a lot harder than even giving the service. But I also think sometimes when we see somebody going through something hard, it can be so hard to know what to do. And I loved reading your post because you've done such a good job showing that people kind of bring what they are capable of bringing. And so I wondered, what have you learned about the many ways that service can be offered or rendered?
Well, I've learned that it can definitely be tough to accept it. In the beginning, people in my church in my ward wanted to bring meals in, and I was like, well, we don't need meals, we're fine. But I had a friend say to me, but people want to help. It helps them feel good, and they feel so helpless right now, but they want to be able to do something, and that's something they can do. And so we had meals brought in like once a week for a little while, and it was awesome. We'd have, somebody come to our house and they'd visit with us for a minute, and it was honestly really nice for us. And I think people liked doing it. I've had to learn to ask for help, which is hard sometimes. Like even something as simple as my husband always took care of the yard, and I went out to, I wanted to use the lawnmower and all that stuff, which not a big deal, but like I don't know how to edge the grass, and so I asked a friend to show me how to do that. Just things like that. And then even harder is we'll go along and there'll come times where I have to make some major decisions. Like there came a time where Lance needed full-time help, like 24/7. And I was working, trying to fill in the financial gaps. And my daughter was helping while I was at work. And the time came that really like he needed help that was going to be either a professional or me, that we didn't really want our daughter doing. Yeah. And I was just so confused on what to do. And I called some of my friends, and they dropped everything. We got together, and I just cried to them and told them the situation, and they helped me reason it out. And so even stuff like that has just been amazing, that I have people I can rely on and that can help me. And of course, prayer always, but sometimes it just helps to talk things through too.
For sure. Absolutely. Sharley, you've described this experience as having your husband disappear a little more every day while he's still right in front of you. And I thought that description is incredibly poignant. Lance was initially diagnosed in fall of 2021. Mm-hmm. And from what I can tell, at least, it seems like the impact was felt very quickly. Mm-hmm. What did it feel like for you to experience such a change over such a short amount of time, but still have your husband there and present with you?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because there wasn't a beginning. There wasn't a dividing line, really. Mm-hmm. Getting the diagnosis was obviously devastating. And we had to face some things that we kind of already had. And I know the Lord prepared me for that. I had had a few things happen. Like I had a friend tell me when I told her about what was happening with Lance, she said her dad had passed away from Alzheimer's. And she said, it sounds like Alzheimer's. And I wasn't ready to hear that yet. So I had just completely pushed that out of my mind. But eventually it came back, and it was kind of a preparation for me of, this is what this could be. It really could be. And so the diagnosis really just maybe at that point was helpful for me, which sounds strange, but up until that point, most people didn't see it in Lance. He was this healthy, he worked out every day. He was this attractive 51-year-old that seemed fine. And I felt like people thought I was crazy. Mm-hmm. My kids didn't even see it. And they would get frustrated with me sometimes, because it would seem like I was treating my husband like he was dumb, which I never did that before. But I think they saw that, and they thought that I was being disrespectful to my husband, and I was trying to help. Like, for example, we'd go out to eat, and he would have a really hard time ordering. So I would order for him because I didn't want to see him struggle trying to order. But to other people, that looked like I was just being a pushy wife. Like, oh my gosh, let him order for himself. Mm-hmm. So things like that, in some ways, getting the diagnosis helped, because then I had validation. Like, no, really, you guys, like this is happening. Yeah. Because at first, not everybody sees it, and I think everybody goes through things as they get older. They kind of forget things, and there's some things that happen, and it's easy to dismiss one or two things. But when it's like affecting your life and you can't continue on with your life the way it is, then it's something more.
Right. I always say when it comes to health stuff too, there's nothing worse than not knowing. And so I'm sure knowing what it was and then being able to move forward from that helps, as hard as it is. I loved one post you shared, Sharley, where you wrote, remember in the movie Hook when Tinkerbell is trying to convince the Lost Boys that the grown man in front of them is actually Peter Pan. One of the Lost Boys takes Peter by the face and studies him. Suddenly, the boy's eyes light up as he said, "Oh, there you are, Peter." And then you said, today, Lance smiled and laughed at something I said. There he was. It caught me totally off guard. And I wondered, how often do those kind of moments happen? How often have they happened over the last few years? And what have those moments meant to you?
Yeah, it's really a miracle when we see those moments. It's just such a tender mercy, and it happens less frequent now than it did before. I see it a lot when our kids are around, that he is happy and he knows who they are and he likes being with them. And I've had moments between just the two of us when we'll just look in each other's eyes and we communicate things to each other. But yeah, hearing him laugh or seeing him smile or try to crack a joke, because he was always really funny. So seeing him kind of try to crack a joke, it's fun. And it's kind of crazy. Like, obviously you're going to miss the things that you saw in your husband before, but I even miss some of the things that are Alzheimer's related, which I wouldn't think I would. For a long time, he would have a hard time going to sleep at night. And so I would read scriptures to him because that put him right to sleep, which I think is kind of funny that he would just, nothing could put him to sleep like the scriptures. But he would get his glasses out and put them on when I was reading scriptures to him. And I just thought that was so cute because he wasn't reading, but he would get his reading glasses out because I got my reading glasses out. And then when he stopped doing that, like, it was kind of sad. I missed it a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, it's nice to see those glimpses into Lance.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that he frequently seems to know who your kids are. Mm-hmm. You've talked about how in private, you finally one day decided to ask him if he knew who you were. Mm-hmm. And he replied, "It's hard to say." But then you wrote this on Instagram, and I'm pretty sure I teared up reading this post, but you said, today is our 32nd anniversary. We have lived the majority of our lives together. We have grown and matured and experienced life together. I'm not sure who I am without Lance, so it's okay if he can't put into words who I am. I know he feels I am someone he can rely on and feel safe with. What has it been like for you, Sharley? I think this is probably something that a lot of people have experienced, the feeling of going from being so loved and cared for to then becoming a caregiver. I think becoming a caregiver has to be one of the hardest things. So what has it been like for you to go from being so lucky to be in such a happy, loving marriage to now becoming a caregiver?
It might sound strange, and I'm still in the middle of this, so sometimes it's hard to not get emotional, but I'm honored to be in that position, to be able to help him. It was hard when I was working all the time and wasn't able to be here, and now I'm with him all the time, but I'm honored to be able to give that back to him. And I want more than anything for him to just know that he's loved and that he's still important and that he has things to contribute, and for him to feel safe, because I know his world has got to be so scary. Yeah. And when he's with me, I know he feels safe. And so it just makes me feel so good and so honored. And, we know that I think it's in Matthew, inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. And I've been given this gift of being able to just serve my husband who I love, but also like, I know that the Lord is proud of me for what I'm doing, and that I've been given a gift of being able to serve someone. And I probably wouldn't have gone out and done that on my own. I don't know how to describe it. Like,
something that you didn't seek.
Yes, exactly. Like I wouldn't choose this situation, but it's an opportunity I have to serve that I wouldn't have otherwise had.
Right. Well, you have clearly done a beautiful job of it. I'm sure there are moments where you feel like it's overwhelming, but you have done it with grace, and I think that is so admirable. At what point, Sharley, you've mentioned several times when you had to tell Lance that he probably shouldn't continue working, and how scary that was because he was the provider for your family. But I loved in a post you talked about how you cried for 2 days and then you went and got your real estate license. Can you tell listeners a little bit about how you reached that decision?
There were just so many miracles placed before me. I recognized, and I said, I recognized that it's like God said to me, you're going to go through this really hard thing, but I'm going to place all these things here to help you. And no one was going to come and save me, but I had so much help from our Heavenly Father. Like I had mentioned my husband's a realtor. There was a guy he worked with who years before, like I just had this thought, like, what would I do if something happened to Lance financially? Like, what would I do? How would I get by? Because I was a stay-home mom. I was a homemaker. I didn't work. And the thought came to me, this man's name is John Ames. And the thought came to me, you could go to John Ames. And I was like, okay, that's really weird. Like, go to him and ask for money. Like, I don't understand. But I just kind of blew it off. And that was years before. Well, when Lance was diagnosed, John had come to him and said, hey, I've noticed you're struggling in real estate. I want you to come on my team and be part of my team. And so Lance had just recently gone on John Ames's team and been trying to work as part of his team. Didn't work out for Lance. He couldn't work anymore, but I was able to step into that. And I had this team that they helped train me and coached me and helped make it easy for me to get into this business that I was able to make money right away instead of waiting years like it takes a lot of people in a sales business.
Yeah.
So that was a huge blessing. It was so hard. I would be sitting at a phone making phone calls, and I would have to take regular breaks to go to the bathroom and just cry. I don't want to make it sound like it was easy. And I just walked into this thing like it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I would have quit if I could, but I didn't have a choice. I couldn't quit. And so I pushed through and everything was okay. But it taught me something about not giving up, because I would have if I had the choice. It was so hard. So yeah, I've learned lots of lessons along the way. And that's one of them, is to not give up. And I was forced to learn that lesson. It was a good one to learn, though.
That's such a good lesson. I admire so much the ability to kind of pivot. And I think so many times things happen that are unexpected, that we don't see coming. And you are kind of forced to do that. And sometimes in those moments, it's like, well, what do I do? But I love that you took action and did what you could do. I wanted to ask you, Sharley, one of the darker, harder parts of this experience seems to have been the anxiety that Lance has dealt with. And at one point, it was so difficult that it was it just seems like it was making life incredibly difficult for you and your family. What do you wish people knew about the really ugly parts of Alzheimer's?
Gosh, I wish people could just stay oblivious to it, because if you know about it, it's because you're experiencing it, and it's so hard. Luckily, we were able to get it under control, but they just can become a completely different person. And they can be mean, and they can think that you're out to get them. And we went through that with Lance, where he thought that we were against him, and he thought I was his enemy. And yeah, I actually, it's tough, because in the medical profession, you're trying to get help, but they're all so busy. The neurologist, you get an appointment, or you get a prescription and it doesn't work, and it takes like weeks to get that worked out. And it's just making it through the medical field. And again, I just saw the Lord's hand in my life, because I'm not a person that really goes to the doctor. My kids we've never gone to the ER. And I took my husband to the ER one night because I didn't know what else to do. And that led to a chain of events of us being able to get help that actually helped us. So honestly, faith, I've just had to have faith and rely on Heavenly Father. And I've been guided to different paths that have helped me.
Well, I think that reading your account of those harder parts, to your point, like, I think I've been completely oblivious. I love the show This Is Us, which I think, showed some of the challenges of somebody going through Alzheimer's. But I don't think until you've experienced something like what you've gone through that you have any sense of what those hardest parts are. And I think that's what's made what you're sharing so important and so valuable, is that it does give insight into the experience that you're going through. Another thing that you've shared is kind of confronting this idea of anticipatory grief and wondering whether something might be your last. And I think that has to be incredibly hard to stay in the present when you know that at some point things will be different. And so I wondered, how have you been able to remain present?
That's a really good question. The anticipatory grief, I had never even heard that term before. And once I heard it, I was like, that's exactly it. I know what's coming. And so it's like it's a long-term grief. You're grieving and all along the way, but then you know what's coming too. And you know it's not going to get better. And so I have made a conscious effort to just slow down, delete things from my life that I can delete from my life, and just try and live my life at Lance's pace. And sometimes it's sitting on the couch with him for 2 hours so that he'll have a nap. And, I've got the stuff going on in my head, like, oh, I should be doing laundry. I could get up and do this. I should be doing this. But I've just made the effort to slow down, take that time, and realize this is just a short time in my life. This isn't going to be my entire life. This is a short time in my life. And I'm going to take this time and just be with Lance and just enjoy this, and just lay my head on his shoulder and just remember what it felt like to sit next to him and to hear him breathe and to smell him, and just the things that your husband is your person. And so that's been for me a blessing, and that's something I can do because I know that this is short term. It's not going to be a long term thing for us.
I think that what you just shared is so relevant to so many different situations in life. And I think that it's important for us to recognize that somebody told me when I first had my baby, and she wasn't sleeping through the night and I was completely exhausted. Somebody said, everything is a phase, the good and the bad. And I think that's true in life in general. Everything is going to pass. I think that's why the scriptures say, and it came to pass so much, is to remind us that everything eventually passes. And so we should be present. Speaking of that, I think sometimes when you are being very good at being in the present, it can be overwhelming. And I think that it makes complete sense to me why you've shared candidly that sometimes you've felt ready to be done. How have you dealt with feeling guilt for those type of feelings?
Well, I think sometimes it just feels like our days are so repetitive. It's just the same thing over and over. And I'll have to tell Lance the same thing over and over and over again. And yeah, sometimes I'm like, we know that this life is not the end for us. I know that there are so many good things ahead of us on the other side. And sometimes I'm like, I'm just ready to be done with this and move on to the next phase of my eternal existence. And I'm not. And it's not, I've never been suicidal or anything like that. It's just for the first time in my life, I've felt sometimes just ready to be done. And yeah, there's guilt from that because there's so much good here on the earth. And I know there's things left for me to do. And it's just, I just constantly have to go back to faith that this is Heavenly Father's plan, and that Lance has a different plan than I do. And I'm going to go on living, and I'm going to have things in my life and in my future that he won't, but he'll get to be with his brother and sister who have passed away, and his mom, and he'll get to have other experiences and hopefully still be part of our life here on earth. But yeah, it's all wrapped up in faith, I think, of just that, okay, Heavenly Father has got this. I have no idea what the plan is, but he's got this, and I just need to trust in him.
So well said. Sharley, you recently wrote that you felt like you finally had reached a point where you were ready to face life without Lance when the Lord sees fit. There have been, from what I understand, kind of some ups and downs since he was initially diagnosed, where it was progressing rapidly and then it kind of slowed down and then it picked up again. And I can only imagine, the roller coaster as a wife in wanting to keep your husband longer. But you've reached this point, you said, where you feel like you feel able to handle it. What aspects of the gospel have helped you reach that point? And you mentioned faith. How has faith helped you face this experience?
To say I'm ready is, I know I'll never be ready because it's not something I've experienced before. So I don't really know what to expect as far as like grieving the loss of a spouse, because right now he's still here.
Right.
He's still in front of me. But I felt like Heavenly Father had given me a period of time to, like I said, just be with Lance, and it was a gift for me. And I reached a point where I said, I don't think, almost like I'm being selfish, because I don't think he would want to live his life this way. I think there are so many better things ahead for him. And so for me, I just kind of went to Heavenly Father and said, okay, I think I'm ready. I've had this time. I'm grateful for this time. And I don't want him to have to stick around for me. And I told him that too, during a moment when he seemed like he had some more clarity. I just said, Lance, I want you to know I'm going to be okay. Like, it's going to be hard. And I don't want to do this, but I'm going to be okay. And our kids are going to be okay. And I'm so grateful that you've been my husband. And I'm so grateful that we have the eternities together. And it's okay if you're ready to let go. And that for me, I just had to come to realization. And it took months. It took like 7-8 months for me to come to that of like, I think he's ready. And I need to let go too and say, it's okay. So the gospel, it's hard to pinpoint one thing because it's everything. It's the belief that we are eternal beings and this time here on the earth is short term. It's the belief that this isn't the end, that I'm going to be with him again. And even while I'm still here on the earth, I think he's still going to be part of my life. I think he'll still have an influence in my life and my kids' lives, and probably can do more for us from the other side than he can do here now. So yeah, I mean, the gospel is everything. I don't know how people deal with stuff like this that don't have the gospel, because it would be so hard to not just be bitter and angry and blame God for the hard things you're going through.
Yeah. I want to ask you one last question before we get to the all-in question that I didn't prep you for, so I hope that's okay. But I just wondered, it seems like your kids have been a real strength to you. What kind of gratitude do you feel for your children and for the way that they have helped you through this experience?
Well, I think we've grown so much closer. I think we've always been a close family, but to experience something like this together, you grow closer and you probably share more of your feelings and emotions than maybe you would have in easy times. There's nothing I don't think as rewarding as seeing your adult children being compassionate and kind and loving and being good people. And so, yeah, I'm so grateful that they are the people they are. Like, I'm so proud of them. And I know Lance is so proud of them. And yeah, I think we both just feel the ultimate joy when we get to be with them.
Well, you have a beautiful family.
Thank you.
I so appreciate you giving us a glimpse into your family's life through this interview, and also would just encourage people to go read your posts because you do such a beautiful job. My last question for you, Sharley, is what does it mean to you to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ?
Oh, being all in to me is really taking upon you the name of Christ. And I often think of the commandment, like, don't take the Lord's name in vain. And I heard this somewhere, I can't remember where, but I like to think of it as not taking his name in vain, like as a swear word, but taking his name in vain as I was baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I am a representative of him. And so when I'm driving around and somebody makes me mad, I need to be Christ-like in that situation. And I need to be a representative of Christ at all times, in all things, in all places. And I think that's what all in means to me, is just, and also accepting God's will for your life. Like, what is happening in my life is not at all what I had planned and what I would pick, but accepting that, okay, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow from this. There are positives that are going to come out of this hard situation. And I'm going to continue to be grateful along the way. And to me, that's what being all in is about.
Well, Sharley, you have such a bright light about you and such a good perspective. And I so appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. We will definitely keep you and your family. I will keep you and your family in my prayers, and just thank you for sharing with me today.
Thank you, Morgan. And I love your podcast. I love how uplifting and just spreading goodness, because we need more of that. So thank you.
You're so sweet. Thank you. We are so grateful to Sharley Funk for sharing her experience on this week's podcast. I highly recommend checking out Sharley's Instagram account, The Moment of Funk, because I found her faith so inspiring. Thanks to Derek Campbell for his help with this episode, and thank you for listening.